Okay, so welcome everybody. Let me start with the share screen to go on to the document itself. So off we go. Right, today is the first session on the book or the character Samuel.
After the video, audio is still on.
Oh, the audio is still on now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I've switched it off. Thank you. Right, so we are studying Samuel. Okay, Samuel is a continuation actually of the period of Judges. So you can imagine that there are these three books that are actually connected because they are the same period of history. And Samuel would be the last judge in that period of Judges. And he was in the time, a critical time, when he led Israel in that transition period from their tribal existence. You know, each tribe, they live in their own territory, and they were all living, everyone as they saw fit, until the judges came in to help them to deliver them from the enemies. So he was leading Israel in this critical period when they transit from tribal existence to the time that Israel established a monarchy. Monarchy means they have a king, a human king. Okay, so he was the central character before the nation of Israel had its first king, and you will see him playing multiple roles of authority. He would appear as a priest. He would also be a judge. Like I said, he was the last judge. And then he would be a prophet at the same time, and also a military leader. Okay, so he kind of bao gao liao in all the needs of Israel, and standing in this unique position where he represents two orders. Okay, he represented and defended. He wanted people to stay on in the old covenant with God, where God is king, right? But he was also used by God as the agent to bring in the order of new kings, human kings. Okay, so you can imagine that Samuel in that kind of position would have a struggle. He would have a struggle because it's like an old way of looking at the country under God as king. And then he will have to go to the period, new period of looking at the country with a human king. Okay, so imagine that kind of struggle he would go through. But let's talk about where he falls in the place of history. We have looked at the first part of the table very briefly before, so I will just quickly go through and fill in our genealogy. So first generation, when the Israelites left Egypt, follow my cursor here. All right, we had people like Aaron, who was the high priest. And then you have Moses, the deliverer. And then Nahshon. Nahshon is the ancestor that would come to Obed and Ruth. Okay, so that's the first generation. So from the first generation, it goes on to the second generation that entered the promised land after 40 years. And from Aaron, he passed the baton to his son Eleazar as high priest. Moses will pass, not exactly pass the baton, but his son Gershom is in the second generation that entered the promised land. And for Nahshon, his son was Salmon. Okay, Salmon. And Salmon is the one that married Rahab. The story of Jericho, he married Rahab. Okay, then we move on to the third generation that did not experience warfare previously, okay, when all the leaders died, including Joshua and the elders of that time, leaving a few of the old-timers plus majority of young people, okay? So that was Phinehas, who was the Aaron's grandson. Phinehas would be an old-timer. And then you have Jonathan, Moses' grandson. And then you have Boaz, who was the son of Salmon and Rahab. Okay, and last lesson, last book we studied, Boaz married Ruth. And they had a child called Obed. Okay, they had a child called Obed. And we know their genealogy is from Obed Jesse, and then you have King David coming in. Okay, so to fit in the generations of people that we're going to meet in this study of Samuel, we have Eli, the priest, so that would be the Levite tribe from Aaron, Levi, and Levi would have two sons, Phinehas and Hophni. Okay, so they'll probably fit in somewhere from Obed's generation, because from Obed to Jesse, we have Elkanah. That's a story of Elkanah and Hannah, who would be Samuel's parents. And Samuel would be the one who visits Jesse to choose David as the new king after Saul. Okay, so roughly this is how the people fit in as contemporaries, roughly. I don't have exact dates, so clearly defined like the 3 generations here, but this is where they roughly stand. Okay, so let's look at the birth of Samuel. We have 2 chapters on how he came about. And a story actually starts with Elkanah and his 2 wives. Okay, so can you turn with me to 1 Samuel? 1 Samuel, we start from chapter 1. And can somebody help us to read the first 8 verses? Then we look at the story. Okay, so whoever can find 1 Samuel chapter 1, please try and read the first 8 verses for us clearly.
First Samuel chapter 1, verse 1. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite, from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Verse 3. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portion of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. Verse 5, but to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord has closed her womb. And because the Lord has closed her womb, a rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. Verse 7, this went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Elkanah, her husband, would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?
Okay, thank you, Robert. So he talks about, don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? Remember how the people were talking about better than 7 sons, right? Okay, so what do we see? We see story starts with Elkanah and his 2 wives. Chapter 1, verse 1, a certain man from Ramathaim, okay? And we will see in verse 19 that Ramathaim is the longer form of the usual name for Ramah. Okay, so Samuel comes from this town called Ramah. He's a Zuphite from the hill country of Ephraim. His name is Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, not Tofu, the son of Zuph and Ephraimite. Okay, so you see he is called a Zuphite because he descends from this person called Zuph. Okay, and so in that sense, we see that he came from a family of some significance, because he descending from Zuph, because you see, it would be an important man since the clan was named after him. Okay, so he came from this ancestor called Zuph. And the fact that he had 2 wives, we see, must show that he probably can support the family. Okay, so the thing that we learn from this segment, just one verse alone, tells us it's a very personal story, all right? And it zooms into a family of a certain tribe, place, and ancestry. You can see the tracing of how many generations here. And the author gives us details to trace and pinpoint this specific person, all right? And we find when you read the Bible, a lot of people find reading the Bible very difficult because there's a lot of who is son of who, and son of who, and son of who. Yeah, a lot of us find it very difficult to read Bible because of all this genealogy. But ancestry is important to God's people. Okay, ancestry. Who you come from, who is your grandfather, your great-grandfather, and so on, is very important because it gives a record of life. That means you existed, okay? It gives a record of placement. Where did you come from? And your background, your relations. So for this man, Elkanah, he's traced all the way back to a clan leader called Zuph, okay? And in the sense, the message to us is, you are found in the book of life. Just like the Bible, okay? The Bible talks about the book of life, God's book of life. So in the same way, we are found in the book of life in this particular place of these ancestry links. So for them, it is very important to be able to trace back to their ancestors, okay? And all the more those who are traced up all the way back to very famous people in the Bible, then they have great pride, okay? Just like Apostle Paul, he also can trace his ancestry to the tribe of Benjamin. So he is proud of that. So that is the kind of thinking we must realize about these people. Now, moving on to verse 2, we see that Elkanah had 2 wives. Okay, one was called Hannah. You notice the first wife's named in this list is Hannah. And then the other one is Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had nothing, no children, okay? And so when we trace that kind of culture at that time, Israelites like Elkanah had more than 1 wife because that is the culture. So you can see how the people of God, they are so immersed into the culture of their time that there are some practices that God may not want them to do, but they're still involved, okay? So the idea of 2 wives, and you see the rivalry of wives will be related to their desire for children. Remember Jacob's wives. Yes, who are they? Leah and Rachel, correct? Leah and Rachel, right? Yeah, okay. So Leah and Rachel, they were competing for children, and then the rivalry will be marked by jealousy. They're jealous of each other. Then they will struggle. They will have taunts, you know, laughing, mocking each other, and scheming, which we will see in verse 6. And so the lesson we learn is knowing his wife's contrasting positions. One with children, the other no children. We can expect some problem if the wives are not in harmony. So it's a very sad thing when a family has more than 1 wife and the wives may not get along. So a bigamous family tends to have a problem of harmony if 2 wives are not loving enough to coexist with their differences that can cause dividing lines and tension. And here the biggest dividing line is one has children, the other one has no children. So in this situation, in verse 3, you see every year, Elkanah would go to the temple, okay, temple at Shiloh to worship God and to sacrifice. And it tells us more history. At this place, Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, they were priests of God. Okay, now this is an annual worship practice that Elkanah and the Israelites would engage in. It's a central place. God always says, go to this one place to worship, right? And the priests ministering here are identified. So we see that Elkanah was a conscientious worshiper of God. He obeyed God's laws. And during this time, whole families would make their pilgrimage once a year to this kind of place, the sanctuary, and in this case, it's in Shiloh, to worship at a festival or some special family occasion. And they would present animal sacrifices. After that, the part of the meat was given back to the worshippers, okay, which we will see in chapter 2, okay, and then the portions of meat were very much valued. But in this case of Elkanah and his wives, okay, they would give rise to favoritism, jealousy, bitterness, and distress. Okay, so in verses 4 and 5, we see that Elkanah sacrificed and he gave portions of the meat to Peninnah. Now, Peninnah's name is mentioned first because she had sons and daughters. So if it says she had sons and daughters, plural, that means there must be at least 2 of each. Correct? At least 2 sons, 2 daughters. So plus Peninnah, there would be 5 of them on her side. But Elkanah gave Hannah a double portion because he loved her and the Lord had closed her womb. So it's kind of like consolation for her that he gave her double portion because he loved her. Okay, he loved her, so he tried to ease her suffering in that sense. And so we see that the possessions and portions in families like this become matter of contention when they have rivalry, when there's jealousy, and then they will interpret love and their rights in terms of what they get from the father financially. Okay, financially, give money, or materially, in this case, it is the meat that they get, or attention that the father gives. So Leah is very jealous of Rachel all the time when we talk about Jacob and his 2 wives, right? Attention. Leah is always jealous for his attention, and affection and love. Now, the thing here is, would Peninnah view his double portion treatment of Hannah as favoritism? You see, and lack of love for her. Okay, would it stoke jealousy and insecurity in her? Because for her, it's like, I am the one with children leh. That other wife has no children. She is useless because for them, as a woman, if you have no children, then you are not a woman. Right? A woman's role is to be able to give birth and carry on next generation. Like what Chinese say, 传宗接代. Right? Did I say it correctly? Okay, you have to pass on the generation line by giving birth to children. So for Peninnah, who has children, when she looks at Hannah, it's like, why my husband bothers about her? Because she cannot give birth to children. She's not a woman. All right, she's not a woman. So that could be a cause of rivalry and jealousy for Peninnah. Now, verse 6 tells us something very sad. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb. And that is the reason her rival kept provoking her to irritate her. You know, provoking when somebody has got a wound, and you use your finger or something sharp, you keep digging, you're just hurting the person more and more. Okay? And on top of that, Peninnah and her children, total at least 5 people, form a group against Hannah. Yeah? Now, here's a mystery of life. Somebody may ask question. The Lord had closed Hannah's womb. Did God cause Hannah's suffering? Right? Did God cause Hannah's suffering? Because as the story progresses, we see that not only is she suffering, she's a person who trusts God. So that question, a person who trusts God, but God closed her womb, so she cannot be a mother. This is one of the mysteries of life. Did God really close her womb so that she would not have children? And that will allow Peninnah to use her failure to taunt her, to say, example, oh, God didn't see you as worthy woman to have children. Okay, so it can give rise to unpleasant things from Peninnah. You notice what the Bible says? Rival. Very unpleasant word. Yeah, rival. That means they are competitors, kept provoking to irritate her. Okay, so you can see for Hannah, already bad enough that she has no children. She still has to bear the sight of children from her so-called rival, who keeps on provoking her, irritating her, digging into her wound. Okay, later on we'll see how serious the provocation becomes when she irritates Hannah. But whatever God's reason, so-called the Bible says, closed her womb, 2 points to think about. Okay, 2 points for us to reflect. It was a test and revelation of each character involved. That means it tests the character and it shows the character of Peninnah and Hannah. What kind of person or character is Peninnah? On the other hand, what kind of person is Hannah? Okay, and another point to reflect on is later on, what would Peninnah say when Hannah finally gave birth to Samuel? Yeah, because she's been taunting her. And what else would Peninnah say when Hannah would give birth to more children? Okay, Samuel was just the start. Later on, Hannah would have more children. So God opened up her womb. Eventually, you see how, what kind of person Peninnah was exposed before Hannah had children. And then after Hannah had Samuel and further children, we don't know how Peninnah behaved. Okay, but at this point in time, we see her colors already. So that is very interesting when God allows so-called bad things, like in this case for Hannah, barrenness, she cannot give birth to children. Something is being revealed. Somebody is being tested. Okay, so it speaks to us also, how do we react to people? How do we respond to people? So let's look at how we can learn from this family. How cruel family, that's their family, they are 2 wives of the same man, can be if there's no genuine love and bonding. What does your love and bond with family lead you to do for them? And what are the limits of your love and bond? You will do for them up to what point? What will you not do for them in spite of your love? Or are you like an unconditional mother or God who will love and do everything for your son or your daughter? Okay, so what is the limit of your love and bond? Where do you stop saying, okay, I'm not going to do anymore? Or does your love just keep on and on? Okay, then of course we look at application in the Christian context. How much do you love and bond to your family in Christ? You can see if these people are family of God in Christ, it's very sad, no? Okay, now how do we view others receiving better or different treatment from us? Okay, like Peninnah, she could interpret the double portion as, you love her, you don't love me. So unfair of you. I'm the one that gave you children, she didn't give you children. Okay, so how do we view others receiving different treatment from us? Jealousy and envy are common in human hearts. You know, we see, we become jealous, we are envious. And are we jealous? What stirs up our jealousy? Question, how well do you handle jealousy and envy? So these are things that are real. And I once just flipped through a book at Popular and I saw this book written, secular book, written by a person. And he identifies one of the key things about human being is jealousy and envy. And he says all of us have jealousy and envy. Okay, so it looks like jealousy and envy is actually very common in us human beings. We experience it sometime or other. Okay, so how do we handle jealousy and envy? Because what it does is, you can see it will cause a lot of problems by the person who cannot control herself. In this case, Peninnah. So how we treat others, you know, the test and the revelation. How we treat others, especially those we view to be an inferior situation to us, and especially who cannot strike back, like Peninnah. She thinks that she's in a better position than Hannah, and Hannah cannot hit her back because there's no argument. You have no children, I have at least 4. Yeah? So how do we treat others is a test and revelation of our character. Okay? Test, reveal character. To treat someone or to treat each other with contempt or anything less than kindness, no matter how much of a threat or rival the other person is, shows our God is not Jesus Christ. Because why? Our God is jealousy, envy, and contempt, you know. So if we are indeed godly, our response to someone should be to extend a humble, loving hand instead of criticizing and gorek, picking on each other. She purposely gorek her Hannah's wound. Gorek means dig, okay? So to the Hebrew mind, ultimately, it was God that had the final say of everything that happened or didn't happen. Okay, so to them, they look at it as God closed her womb. As Jacob and the friends, you know the story of Jacob? Okay, sorry, Job, not Jacob, sorry. Job and their friends would think God caused his loss and suffering, but actually it came from Satan. Satan was the one that took away his wealth and his family and so on, causing his suffering. Okay, so but to the Hebrew mind, those who are Hebrews, God is the one who is sovereign, so God is the one that did it in that sense, because he's overall in control. Okay, so they view God as closing Hannah's womb, all right, and this is how Peninnah behaved in that particular situation. And then the story goes, year after year it happened. Whenever Hannah went to the Lord's house, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. So she lost her appetite and she just cried and cried and cried. Okay, so just now I was saying the intensity of her provoking and irritating Hannah, how bad it was, so bad that provoked her till she wept and would not eat. She lost her appetite. Okay, so when a person views another person in the same situation of family as a rival, relationships are not healthy. To look for that person's weakness, to provoke them, shows the wickedness of the human heart. Peninnah showed a lack of both sympathy and godly character. As a woman, she could not empathize with Hannah because she herself had children. She did not see a need that she could or should help to lessen the pain. Okay, so this Peninnah, somehow, her heart is not for another person, in this case, Hannah. Now, Peninnah was a person who could not look to the interests of somebody whom she perceived as a rival. Remember just now the Bible said they were rivals. They were competitors in Elkanah's family. It's very unpleasant when in the same family you are competing. Okay? So whether a biological family or in God's church family, it's a very unpleasant thing. Now, here is something to actually think about. We may be kind to people who do not pose a threat of some kind to us. Can we be generous and kind to someone who is a rival to our interests and objectives? It's very easy for some people. It's easy to be kind to you as long as you're not a threat to me. You're not a threat to my interests or my ambitions. But if you are a threat to my ambitions, then sorry, it's not personal. I will have to fight you. Okay, I will have to sabo you and all that. So are we able to check ourselves and repent when we are jealous or unkind? Okay, doesn't look like Peninnah was able to do that, because you see it was year after year. So Peninnah never stopped because the opportunity came every year at the sacrifice. She would go and provoke Hannah. And what's worse is she actually so-called went to church to do it. you see, went to the Lord's house. So you can see how, if this is a Christian setting, it's people fighting in the church, okay? Treating another person badly in the church. Does this person pose a threat to you? Okay, so are we able to check, do we hide behind our other forms of kindness and thoughtfulness and excuse, ignore, or justify these other flaws in us? You know, sometimes Christians can behave like that. Because I'm very nice to people, yeah, I give, I help, I visit, I pray for you, I do these things for you, I counsel you, I walk with you, I visit you. But when it comes to something not nice that I feel very unhappy or I feel threatened, wow, you better watch out, I give it to you. Okay? But it's okay, because you see, I did all these wonderful things. So I treat you in this way, I behave in this way that's not nice, it's okay. Because overall, I'm a very good Christian. Okay? So do we hide behind our other forms of kindness and thoughtfulness, and we excuse, ignore, or justify these wrong things in us? So it becomes what? It becomes hidden and it becomes unchanged. The character cannot grow. Verse 8. Elkanah, when they went, every year they went to the temple, to Shiloh, to do the sacrifice. Here's what Elkanah, her husband, would say to her. Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? Last lesson, you remember we talked about Ruth and Naomi, and the people were saying that Naomi had this daughter-in-law, Ruth, was better to her than 7 sons. Okay? Jacob, when you asked this question, why 7 sons? I went back to think about it. I think David had 7 brothers. Okay, David had 7 brothers. So plus David would be 8 sons. So not quite exactly the same. Then Jesus told a parable, if you remember, about a family where the son, that first son married a woman, then the first son died. Then the second son married a woman and did not give birth, so the second son died. And so all 7 sons took turns marrying that woman, and then all 7 sons died. Okay, and then after that they went to heaven. So the person asked Jesus, which son will be or rather the woman will be which son's wife? So that was the story of 7 sons. And then the Bible has another story of 7 sons of Sceva that tried to cast out a demon. Okay, so other than that, we don't really have a real story of 7 sons. So don't I mean more to you than 10 sons is again a good number. Okay, so in that sense, I am the perfect husband for you lah, even if you don't have sons. It's okay, right? So he's trying to tell her, it's okay that you don't have sons. I'm still the perfect husband for you. Okay, I still treat you very well. So we see that she, despite being ill-treated, she did not seem to retaliate because she never complained to Elkanah, the husband. See, she didn't go to Elkanah and say, oh, you know that Peninnah, she's really very bad to me. Every year we go there, she would go rape my wound. Yeah, she didn't do that. She didn't seem to retaliate. She just seemed to have suffered in silence. So we ask this question because some of us will not be able to tahan. Some of us will not tahan Hannah. Why is she so weak one? She let people trample on her feelings. Fight back. Give her back. You know, she come and do something nasty to you. You do her back to her. Why are you so quiet? Why are you so weak? Don't let her trample on you. You go and fight her back. So question, was she a weak character to let someone trample on her feelings? Okay, to make her feel like a worthless woman because she cannot have children. So the treatment went on for years, but Elkanah seemed oblivious to her suffering and what was going on behind his back. Because he kept asking, why are you weeping? He doesn't know that the other wife, Peninnah, kept irritating, provoking, and poking her wound. Why won't you eat? And you see, The Bible already said a rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. He didn't know all these things. Look at that, it says year after year. Okay, so he showed his ignorance of what was going on in his family and sensitivity to Hannah, what happened to her. He didn't see the rivalry of Peninnah towards Hannah because the aggression seems one-sided from Peninnah. Okay, he didn't see the rivalry. He didn't see the character of his wife. And so it implies to us she was deceitful and she covered up all her unkindness to Hannah from Elkanah. And more, she took advantage of Hannah's silence. She pressed on with her taunting every year. Okay, and finally, reason 3, Elkanah just didn't know the reasons for Hannah's misery. Okay, he just ignorant and not sensitive. And the depth of Hannah's sorrow on not having children, he tried to comfort her and give her love, but it didn't comfort her. Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? Okay, so when a person's emotions are so bitter, so strong, this kind of words don't help her. Okay, now what lesson can we learn? It's really a rebuke and a tragedy that while we can be conscientious worshippers of God, we are oblivious of the pain, suffering, and wrong among loved ones in the family. You know, the rivalry going on inside there that he just doesn't know, or, you know, and yet he's a conscientious worshipper of God. So in the sense, the church, right? A picture of the church, when things are going on in the church and there's a lot of suffering and pain going on, and the rest of us are just oblivious, right? It is really a sad picture of a family. Now, how are God's values seen or not seen in us, being transmitted and formed in our family, especially when we are head of the household? Okay, because you see, all the things are being hidden. Nobody brings up all the pain and the suffering. Okay, what about the mother, example, Peninnah? What kind of values is she transmitting to her children? And what values are we teaching and modeling for the future generation? Okay, it's a very sad family situation here for Hannah, but God is still in control, which is good. So now we move on to Hannah's prayer. Okay, can somebody read for us, continue from verse 9 on to verse 20. And somebody turn to your Bible, 1 Samuel chapter 1. Read for us verse 9 to 20.
I shall read.
Thank
verse
you.
9. Verse 9. Once when they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. In bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. And she kept on praying to the Lord. Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, and her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, How long will you keep on getting drunk? Get rid of your wine. Not so, my lord, Hannah replied. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief. Eli answered, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. She said, May your servant find favor in your eyes. Then she went away and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Early the next morning, they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah. Elkanah lay with Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord for him.
Thank you. All right, so Hannah went to pray, okay, on this particular year. So verse 9 says, once when they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. So on this particular year, they were there as usual. So you know, after the sacrifices and all that, a portion of the meat is given back to the worshippers. Okay, so they eat and drink, and Hannah stood up. But when Hannah stood up, we think that she finished eating and drinking, when in actual fact she did not. So she was not eating and drinking because her heart was full of or rather her soul was full of bitterness. So she got up, okay, and in bitterness of soul, she wept much and prayed to the Lord, and she made a vow, okay. So you see, all the bitterness in her has been bottled up until this particular year. She made up her mind, this is what I shall do. I shall pray to God about it. Okay, I shall go to the temple and ask God. And she made a vow. She said, "O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me." Now, question is, does this mean that God forgot her? Okay, and not forget, remember and not forget. Your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. Now, if you understand the language here, what she's saying is she is going to make him a Nazirite, like Samson, okay? Where no razor will ever be used on his head means they will not cut his hair off, okay? So she promised to dedicate her son to God as a Nazirite. So what lesson can we learn? In her helplessness, because she's really trapped, she cannot do anything, and her despair, and also her bitterness with that life situation. She's not a woman, she cannot give birth, she cannot be a mother, all right? And everybody will despise her, at least that the rival at home despises her, okay? She did not blame. Even with all these emotions bottled up in her, you see, she didn't blame God, she didn't blame Peninnah, she didn't blame her husband. Hey, Elkanah, why you so bad, husband? You never give me any children. She doesn't blame anybody, okay? Instead, she prayed. She didn't ask why. Because like all of us, we ask why. At the end of it, you know, when we talk about the mystery of life, when we ask about the mystery of life, can we get an answer why there was no child? Sometimes maybe we discover, but many times we don't, okay? So she did not ask why, but her faith in God did not waver, okay? She reinforced her prayer with a vow that she will consecrate the son to God and dedicate him to be a Nazirite for life. You can read more about Nazirite in Leviticus 6, but let's just read 2 verses. Read Leviticus 6, verse 5 and 8. Can we turn there to Leviticus 6? Did I get the right one or wrong one? Sorry. 6 or 16. Okay, I seem to have got the wrong passage. No, I think I have got the wrong figure, so I will get back to you on that. Is it 6? Yeah, I have the wrong reference. Okay, we'll get back to that. another time. Okay, sorry for my mistake. So what we see happening here is like what many people would do. It seems like when we pray, we ask God for something, we bargain with God. Okay, we will seem to bargain with God. It's like, okay, God, you give me a son, and then this is what I will do for you. Okay, God, you answer my prayer, and this is how I will repay you back in that sense. Okay, so do we bargain with God? Would we be bitter with God if He didn't give us the answer we want? All right, so Hannah, whether she's bargaining with God or not, she came to God with all the emotions. Okay, she came to God with all the emotions, and she actually made a promise to God about the son. So in verse 9b, and then we skip to 12 to 14, we come back to 9, 10 and 11 later. Eli the priest was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple, and he observed her mouth. So he was sitting there, he watched her, and he saw that her mouth was moving. Right? Actually, Hannah was praying in her heart, but her lips were moving, and so Eli didn't hear any words from her, so he could not hear her prayer. And he thought she was drunk, so he told her, how long will you keep on getting drunk? Get rid of your wine. So he thinks she's a bad woman, in other words. She's drunk here. So if we are already bitter, like Hannah's case here, it can add to our bitterness if we are misunderstood. Okay, it can be a wound for us emotionally if already we are struggling with all the pain and bitterness, and somebody comes along and talks like we are a bad person. You know? So if people think we're doing something wrong when we are not, it can add to the pain that we already have. All right, and it will be worse if the person who misunderstands us is the leader. In this case, Eli is the priest. Okay, he's the religious leader, and he thinks she's a bad woman. So in this case, Hannah doesn't keep quiet, but she doesn't fight anyway. So in verse 15 to 16, she clarified she was deeply troubled. So she shared her woe, or rather her feelings. And she said that she was pouring out her soul to the Lord. Okay, so you see all those things that she's kept in her heart for years. This is the 1 year that she poured it out to God. And she told Eli she was not a wicked woman who had been drinking, but praying out of a great anguish and grief. Okay? Something that she cannot help after so long. The good thing about this conversation between the two of them is that Eli spoke up his wrong impressions, and this allowed Hannah to explain, I'm not a bad woman. Talking allowed Eli to discover that his initial impression of her was wrong. So we have to give people a chance, and we have to be prepared to know that sometimes we are all very proud that we are a good judge of character, right? A good judge of character can also be wrong. So in this case, Eli was wrong about Hannah, and that's where it's important to get our facts straight to be sure we don't go away thinking badly of others. Okay, so in this case here, we find that Eli was straightened because Hannah was truthful and she was outspoken about her feelings. But again, you see how she reacted. She didn't fight. She was just explaining. So this lady has been taking up a lot in her life. Verse 17 and 18, Eli gave his blessing of peace and that God would grant what she asked of him. So she never told him that she was praying for a son. See, she didn't tell him she was praying for a son. She was just telling him that she was pouring out her anguish and grief to God. So Eli prayed that God would grant her what she asked of God. And then Hannah was grateful for his kind answer. Then she went and ate something and her face was no longer downcast. Lesson we learn, after we bring our prayer and misery to God, we can get on with life. Okay, we don't just keep brooding. We don't just keep stewing in our bitterness. there's no need to continue to brood and be miserable. Whether we have faith, regardless of God's answer, this is a sensible response. Life must go on. What did she do? She went and ate something. Her face was no longer downcast. Okay, so she is very sensible now. After the comfort from Eli and the blessing from Eli, she felt a lot better. All the bitterness and anguish and everything has been poured out. She also feels good that Eli didn't misunderstand her now. Okay, she told Eli how she was feeling, just that she didn't tell him her wish for a prayer for a son. Okay, and then when she finished this encounter with Eli, she went back and carried on with life, no longer downcast face. So faith in the true God should not be based purely on God having to grant all our prayers. Okay? Faith in the true God should not be based purely on God having to grant all our prayers. Otherwise, he's just a Coke machine. We add in a few dollars of faithful prayer and some bitterness, and then after that, the Coke machine, God dispenses us whatever we want. God is not like that. Okay, should not be having faith in God because God answers only because God answers prayers and nothing else. So verse 19 to 20, we see that they return home to Ramah after worshipping. So you see the name is of the place they live is called Ramah, no longer Ramathaim, which is the full name. And the Bible says God remembered Hannah. And in time, conceived and gave birth to a son. She named Samuel because I asked the Lord for him. Now, the name Samuel is not I asked, okay? The name Samuel sounds like the Hebrew for heard by God. So that means the testimony of this son's name is God heard her prayer and God gave her this son in answer. So the idea of God remembered in the Bible for the Hebrews is not to say God has the memory that failed him. Okay, not like people forget and now people remember. It means that God acted according to his covenant character. Okay, so remembered means God acted according to his covenant character. What kind of a God is he? He acts according to that character. So he acted according to his character to Hannah and gave her a son. So we find that God hears our prayer, whether we receive a yes or no answer or not. Okay? Then he has power to answer prayer with a yes. Not all prayers God answers a yes. In this case, it is a yes. Here he does. Okay? So we see that Samuel's name means heard by God. And not just heard, God answered. So now we move on to the birth of this son, and now Hannah is no longer motherless, no longer a useless woman. Okay, so can somebody read for us? Chapter 1, verse 21, all the way to the end of the chapter.
The next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, "Wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently." "Whatever you think is best," Elkanah agreed. "Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise." So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice and a basket of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. "Sir, do you remember me?" Hannah asked. I am the woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worship the Lord there.
Okay, your version says they worship the Lord there. Okay, so we see that Samuel is born. Now Peninnah's taunt has to be silenced, right? But the story, Peninnah doesn't come into the story anymore. Okay, so the end of Peninnah where the Bible is concerned, but we will have a word about her later. Okay, so Hannah did not go with Elkanah on this particular year and the family to do the normal annual sacrifice to God. And she told her husband that she wanted the boy to be weaned, then she would take him and present him to God, and he would live there forever or for the rest of his life. Okay, so Elkanah agreed, and so she nursed her son until she had weaned him. So the significance we see is Hannah also remembered her part. She remembered her word to God, that she would dedicate her son to God for life. And we must keep our vows and promises that we make to show that we're trustworthy and faithful like God. Okay, so we see Hannah, even though she's can I say the equivalent of a good Christian, okay, the behavior and all that, we see that she doesn't go back on her word. She said, God, you give me the son, I will return the son to you to serve you for his whole life. And she didn't become possessive and say, no, my son, thank you, God, I'll keep my son. No, she's trustworthy, she's faithful. And with her husband's full agreement, Hannah fulfilled her vow and gave Samuel to God. The lesson, it is important for husband and wife to be united, to be dedicated to honor God. So you can see Elkanah is not a perfect husband, but in many ways, he is a person who honors God. Okay, so don't look for a perfect husband in that sense, all right? But be thankful that your husband or your wife, whoever you are, okay, whether you're male or female, be thankful that your spouse can be united with you in the dedication and honoring God. So verse 24 to 28, after the boy was weaned, young as he was, she took him with the sacrifices to Shiloh. Okay, now let's talk a bit about his weaning. When she took Samuel to the Lord's house after weaning him, it was a young child, it was not a baby. Okay, she didn't bring a baby to Shiloh to give to God. In the Near East, children, especially boys, were not weaned until they were 3 or 4 years old, and it can stretch up to 7 years old. Okay, so she was not taking a small baby to Eli to care for, but a boy of a few years old to be trained for the Lord. We'll see more in chapter 3, but at this point in time, we see that she prepared herself mentally already to fulfill her vow. Earlier on, it's always been she agreed. She promised she will keep her vow. Now she's mentally prepared. Okay, so she brought him with her to Shiloh. And when it was time to give him up, she kept her word. She didn't cling on. In a few years she had with him, she had prepared him for his role. Okay, so you imagine a child that young, 3, 4, or maximum 7 years old, just live with a total stranger. Okay, so she has to prepare him for that kind of change. So when she met Eli, she reminded him of their meeting years back, a few years back. So that was at least 3 to 7 years at least. Okay, 3 to 7 years back. Can Eli remember? Wow, that's a long time. A chance meeting with a woman that he thought was drunk. Told him that God granted her the child, so she gave him to God for his whole life. And he worshipped the Lord, or they worship according to Mac's Bible. So you see, for Eli, it is a surprise when a woman suddenly approaches him with a son to say, Remember, you met me. At that time, you didn't know it, but I was actually praying to God to ask for a son. Now look, God answered my prayer, and here is that son. How do you think Eli felt? Okay, so Hannah gave a testimony to Eli. All right, she reminded him, and then she told him what continued, part 2 of a story that he didn't know for these 3 to 7 years. And she modeled faithfulness to God in the few years that she weaned Samuel. So this was a mother, a godly mother, who knows what she's going to do with the son as far as God is concerned. Okay, bring up the child in the ways of the Lord as early as the child is able to learn. Can somebody turn to Proverbs 22 verse 6 and tell us what it says? Proverbs 22 verse 6.
Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it.
Thank you. Okay, start children, right? When they are young, so they are old, they will not turn away from it. So this is the training that you can see Hannah could do with Samuel in those few years. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are, whether you're grandparents or you're young couple or young person getting married or whatever it is, remember your child in the first 3 to as early as 3 to 7 years and even younger can be learning already. Okay, learning about God's ways. So grab that window of learning to teach your child. Now, a word about Peninnah, as I said just now, we see the story between Hannah and Peninnah. The Bible shows it is a type of woman like Hannah that has a story worth telling. Okay, so the story of Hannah will still continue for a while, but Peninnah goes out of the story because she's not the kind of character God wants to teach us about godliness. Okay, so like I said many times, God always puts in the Bible 2 people side by side to give us a good demo and a bad demo. Right? So here God's word shows who has the right faith, the right practice, and the right character. And with that, Peninnah, in that sense, she's just like the rest of the world, and the Bible doesn't focus too much on that because we see the worldly people everywhere. Okay? But we see godly people like Hannah, and we're going to see more of her through her prayer. Okay? So the next part, she prays. Can somebody read for us her prayer, which is from chapter 2, verse 1 to 11. Hannah's prayer, chapter 2, verse 1 to 11.
Hannah's prayer. Then Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There is no rock like our God. Do not keep talking so proudly, or let your mouth speak such arrogance. For the Lord is a God who knows, and by him deeds are weighed." Continue.
Yes, please, up to verse 11.
Okay. "The bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who were full hire themselves out for food, but those who were hungry are hungry no more. She who was barren has borne 7 children, but she who has had many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He sits them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's. On them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful servants, but the wicked will be silenced in the place of darkness. It is not by strength that one prevails. Those who oppose the Lord will be broken. The Most High will thunder from heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest.
Thank you. Okay. You know, Hannah's prayer is very similar to Mary's song. Okay. Mary's song is much shorter, and it's from Luke chapter 1, verse 46 to 55. Let's read that song of Mary, you know, after she was told that she would give birth to baby Jesus. Okay, let's look at Luke 1, 46 to 55, sorry. And then we compare the two ladies' words.
And Mary said, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him, from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors."
Okay, thank you. All right. So Mary's song or prayer is actually shorter than Hannah's prayer. Okay, we're going to do a comparison and a very brief one. I'm not doing it in detail. So from there, I'm going to pull up some foundational truths. Okay, so we look at the two prayers and songs, and we look at the truth that they bring out. Now, chapter 2, verse 1 for Hannah. So remember, Hannah's one is 1 Samuel chapter 2. For Mary's one is Luke chapter 1. Okay, I indicate the verses there. When Hannah said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord, the Lord, my horn is lifted high." Okay, my mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. Mary's song in verse 46 to 47, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior." You can see the blue words, they are actually very similar. Okay, and then she goes on, verse 48 and 49, "For he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me." And that corresponds to Hannah's, "I delight in your deliverance." For Mary, Mighty One has done great things for me. For Hannah, God delivered her and she delights, she's happy, she rejoices. So the foundational truth we see is God is the source of our joy and strength. You see, my heart rejoices in the Lord. My soul glorifies the Lord. My soul, spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. He's our Savior. Okay? So he is the source. He is the one that gives us the reason to rejoice. Okay? He's the one that gives us the reason to rejoice. He's the one that gives us our joy, our strength, and all because he saves. Now, "I delight in your deliverance, and the Mighty One has done great things for me," shows God watches over me and does great things for me. Example, he delivers me from whatever it may be. Okay, so you can see the foundational truth in whether you call it a prayer, you call it a song, is bringing out truths of God. One is Old Testament, one is New Testament, but the elements, like I said, that similar elements you can find in the two. Okay? So the question is, when we go through struggle, especially emotionally, can we still rejoice and give this testimony? Okay, you can see that they have been through the struggles and God has come through for them. Okay, but in the process, you see, for them, the emotion part is the part, just now she was talking about the bitterness, the grief, and the anguish. Those were the parts that Hannah allowed herself to be overwhelmed by, until one day she went to the temple and just poured out everything, and Eli the priest thought that she was a bad woman who was drunk. Actually, she was not. So it gives a misunderstanding. It gives rise to people misunderstanding us when we have all this bitterness that we keep up inside ourselves. Okay, what happened to the faith in God? Yeah, especially if, let's say, to a non-Christian. Okay, to a non-Christian, if the non-Christian sees our bitterness, sees the struggles we have and how we are so in anguish, in pain, in bitterness, then they will think, hey, your Christian God didn't help you. Okay, so the foundational truth is God is above all these things, and He is the source of joy and strength, whether we have children, don't have children, and so on. Then in verse 2, I'm following Hannah's prayer to go. There is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one besides you. There's no rock like our God. And Mary says, holy is His name. So simple. Okay? So the truth we see is God is the only holy one. There's no other holy one, whether God or person like Him. Okay? So that's where God says, be holy as He is holy. God says, be holy as God is holy. So we have to ask ourselves, what is holy and how do we be holy? How do we show the world that God is different, that's holy, and we are different? So in this here, if you see, if you look at this, it starts with praise to God. You see, whether song or prayer, it starts with praise, it starts with worship, it starts with God's holiness. Do you remember another shorter prayer actually starting something like this? For those who Central Core, you say every week. What prayer do you say every week, those people from Central Core?
The Lord's Prayer.
Lord's Prayer.
Yes, this is very much like the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Okay, holy is your name. Yeah, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Okay, so this is very much what we learn to pray when we do the Lord's Prayer, starting with who is God and the reason for our ability to rejoice, because we have a holy God. Holy is your name. So a lot of prayers, even though we use different words, the elements are very similar. Okay, then on to Hannah's prayer, verse 3. Do not keep talking so loudly or let your mouth speak with such arrogance, for the Lord is a God who knows, and by Him deeds are weighed. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at this, I think this is the reason that Hannah did not fight back with Peninnah. Okay, Hannah did not fight back with Peninnah because You see, Peninnah's arrogance and the way she treated Hannah by provoking and irritating her, right? Making her cry and making her unable to eat. God knows. And by him, your deeds are weighed. Okay, so Mary says in verse 51, God has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. So this is Peninnah, proud in her inmost thoughts because she thinks she's in a position to go and provoke Hannah and stir her up. Okay? Because she has children, Hannah has nothing. So God knows the lesson we learn, the proud and arrogant in their thoughts. And he's able to weigh, that is to assess and judge their actions by the thoughts of their heart. So you see, God knows both the inside and the outside. But for us, we only see and then we criticize, which we have to be very careful, okay? Because here's the important thing, inmost thoughts. We don't know the inmost thoughts of people. God knows, God who knows, by him deeds are weighed. Okay, so the bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumble are armed with strength. Mary did not have anything similar to that. But the truth we learn is God is able to turn the tables on the mighty. See, the bows of the warriors are broken. So that means they no longer have their weapons or power to fight. God turns the tables on the mighty and gives strength, is able to give strength and victory to those who seem defeated. You see, they stumbled, but they are armed with strength. So even though they stumble and kind of like fell, God can give them the strength to have victory while seeming to be defeated. Verse 5, those who were full hired themselves out for food, but those who were hungry hunger no more. Mary's verse 53, he has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. So you can see God feeds the hungry. Okay, God takes care of those in need. And those who are self-sufficient will find themselves needy. The rich go away empty. Verse 6, the Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. Shows God has power over life and death. Okay, he brings down to the grave and raises up means resurrection. Okay, so God has power over life and death, and God even has the power for resurrection. And that's what happened with Jesus, resurrected. Verse 7, the Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. So you can see the opposites, how God handles the opposites of human society, human status. God can and does make people poor or rich. He responds to the humble and he raises them up. Verse 8, he raises the poor from the dust. So this is another picture of the humble person. You know, when in the Old Testament, when those people who commit sin or do something terrible, they normally tear their clothes and then they lay down in the dust on the floor. That is a way of showing their humbling before God. So he raises the poor from the dust, that means the humble, and he lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's, upon them he has set the world. So you see, God brought down rulers from their thrones, but God has lifted up the humble. That's from Mary. So God unseats rulers, he pulls them down from their thrones, okay, and raises the poor and humble to places of honor and power. So that's where we learn to trust God and not fight over promotions, perhaps. Yeah, sometimes we Christians so determined to prove ourselves, right? We do all kinds of things in the workplace, but actually God can put us in places of honor and power when we humble ourselves. Okay? For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's. upon them he has set the world. So here, he's the one who has created. The foundations of the earth are the Lord's. Upon them he has set the world. So we see he is the one who created and set up the way the natural world works. And as the creator, he also has ultimate control and sovereignty over the human realm. Okay, so foundations of the earth, he is the one that used science to create and set up a natural world that we live in. Verse 9 of Hannah's prayer, he will guard the feet of his saints, but the wicked will be silenced in darkness. It is not by strength that one prevails. So it's not because you're strong and you're powerful that you will definitely win. Okay? Because God is the one that will guard. Mary says in verse 54 to 55, he has helped his servant Israel. So the saints, in the sense connected to Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, even as he said to our fathers. Okay, so he keeps his promise. He keeps his promise, and remember, the word remembering means God acts according to his covenant character. What is his covenant character? Here it is merciful. Okay, merciful. So God, the truth we learn is God will ensure the righteous can keep to the right path in his mercy. So it's not because we are that good, it's because of God's mercy that we can keep to the right path. Because of his promise to the father of faith, Abraham, and each faithful follower, the saints. Okay, so he keeps them in the right path, even though they may stumble or even though they are not perfect. But they try their best to be faithful, and they will prevail regardless of their strength. Whether you're a person with not much strength or you're a person with much strength, God will keep your path straight. Proverbs 3 verse 5 and 6. Okay, Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. God will keep your path straight as long as you work on being righteous, and he will, in his mercy, enable you to do so. Verse 10, those who oppose the Lord will be broken or shattered. He will thunder against them from heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Anointed is the chosen one. And horn is normally a symbol of strength. Okay? The symbol of strength or symbol of power. So he will exalt the power or the strength of his chosen ones. So God will break the power of those who antagonize him, go against him, and he has overall power and authority to judge every single person. He will thunder against them from heaven, and he will judge the ends of the earth. So he has the authority and power to judge every single person. Then he gives, just like he gives strength to his king, he will give strength and raise up his chosen ones or the anointed. So you can see the prayer of Hannah, what kind of person she is. Okay, what kind of person she is after all she has gone through suffering. It showed her faith and her character of trust in God. She did not fight. She did not fight back with Peninnah because of the strong foundation of her faith in God. Okay, strong foundation of faith in God. So here is a lady. Here's a lady that shows another side of suffering. We saw Naomi, we saw Naomi, the bitterness, and God has emptied her. Here, Hannah started empty already. Okay, there was God emptied her business. She already started the story being an empty woman. But because of a strong foundation of faith in God, and even with her emotional struggles, she kept on trusting God and praying to God without complaining, without blaming people. Of course, the question is still there. should she just let Penina wallop her and take a step on her, trample her? That's a good question to think about. Okay. The Old Testament contains stories and teachings that are truths of God for all generations. Mary's song has strong similarities to Hannah's prayer. Now, you think there are many, many years apart from Hannah's story all the way to Mary. Okay, there are many, many years, many, many generations in between them. So, Hannah's prayer is part of Bible, Old Testament Bible for Mary. Okay, now even if let's say Mary read her Bible well and learned Hannah's prayer, and she patterned her song, that means she copied certain parts of Hannah's prayer or the elements, it is evidence that teaching about God has been transmitted so that future generations can have the same accurate faith in God. Remember, Ruth's story teaches us, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Kept the faith means we don't let God's truths be distorted, be watered down, be compromised. Okay, so you can see just from the song, Hannah's prayer or song with Mary's prayer or song, you can see that the Jewish people, they have preserved the truths about God. They have preserved the truths about God so that two women, many, many generations apart, they're living many generations apart, their songs, their prayer about God is all very similar. Okay, the truth of God is there. Then we move on to chapter 2, verse 11. How much time do we have? Okay, we have another 17 more minutes. I think I will stop here. Oh, okay, never mind. There is one part. Verse 11. Yeah, verse 11. Okay. Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, and the Lord ministered before the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest. So the story tells of Elkanah going home. Did Hannah stay behind to get herself adjusted to the idea of giving up Samuel, or did she go home with, or did she go back home without him? Okay, now this is just a small matter, but I thought maybe for those who have a mother's heart, you would be able to think of Hannah saying bye-bye to the son that she loves so much. She's going to miss him. Okay, so is she going to go home and just think about him at home, or would she spend a little bit more time staying there to kind of like keep an eye before she's, okay, time to say bye-bye and just go home? Okay, whatever it is, Bible doesn't say, but I'm just looking at the mother's heart. What is important here is very interesting, okay, that we may not spend time thinking, but think about it now. Young as he was, Samuel served in the temple before the Lord. Here's the thing. Ministered before the Lord under the training and guidance of Eli the priest. Okay, we're going to see more about Eli soon in the next part of the story, but next week. Here we see that God sees what people are doing because they serve in his presence. See, in this case, it is Samuel. Samuel served in the temple before the Lord. So what does this mean? To say before the Lord means Samuel was in God's presence. Samuel ministered in God's presence under Eli the priest. So here is a little boy, maybe about 7 years old. How conscious are we that we are in God's presence when we serve in the assembly of believers? You see, he is in the temple with Eli and God, and we are in the church, right? Before the Lord. That means God can see us. How do we interact and carry ourselves in our service in church? What is the condition of our heart service? What does God see both in our service ministry and in our hearts? See, we are also made aware that Samuel is trained to serve in God's presence by Eli the priest. How well do we learn as a Samuel in church? And on the other hand, how well do we teach and train others as an Eli? See, the thing we may not get until maybe hopefully today we see for the first time. Boy ministering before the Lord means he is standing in front of God's eyes. Even though God is invisible, God is looking at Samuel. So when we are in church, even though God is invisible, if we are before the Lord, God is actually looking at us. That's an interesting thought to think about, right? How would we be any different if we are conscious that God is looking at us when we are in church? Okay, so we stop at verse 11, and next week we continue verse 12 to look at Bible says Eli's wicked sons. Oh, that sounds terrible. Okay, so far, any questions or anything you want to share or reflection?
Alfred, just now the reference for Nazarite, I think is in
Yes.
number 6.
Oh,
Instead of
thank you.
Leviticus 6, it's
Thank
number
you very
6.
much. Okay, let me change that. Number 6.
Number 6, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Okay, number 6. Can we just take a quick look? The Nazarite. Number 6, verse 5 and 8.
It's 2 to 5.
Yes, thank you, Judy. It's correct. Definitely. Number 6, verse 5 and 8. Can somebody please read?
All the days of his vow of separation, no razor shall pass over his head. He shall be holy until the days are fulfilled for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall let the locks of hair on his head grow long. Verse 8, all the days of his separation, he is holy to the Lord.
Thank you. That's very nice reading. Okay, so there you see the period of his separation, he cannot cut his hair off. So this is Samuel. So you imagine Samuel will go around with long hair and is tied up like Samson. Okay, Samson was also a Nazarite. And in this case, it is for his whole life. Can you imagine not going to barber for haircut your whole life? Okay, so really long. And so throughout the period of his separation, he's holy to the Lord. So he is separate. He is different for God. Okay, so the whole life, Samuel would always be separate for God's use. And we will see that in his life. Okay, his life, although he's not a very outstanding character, actually he is somebody who is to be studied very well. Okay, thank you very much for the reading and the sharing. Is there any question or reflection?
Alfred, can I ask?
Yes.
You know, there's this part in the Bible, it says, God has closed Hannah's womb. Is it okay to view it that way? Is it correct?
That's what the Bible says.
Yeah, because I've encountered now, sometimes last time, like if you say that, right, some people will say that no, it wasn't God who did it or something like that. So how should we just take it at face value? That is what it is.
Okay, remember just now I said, so what you are referring to is verse 6. The Lord had closed Hannah's womb. Okay, that was verse 6. The Lord had closed Hannah's womb. So as far as the Bible is concerned, bear in mind I said something extra. Okay, I said something extra, and that is the Hebrew mind. The Hebrew mind is ultimately, it was God that had a final say on everything that happened or didn't happen. Okay, so it would be perceived that God was the one who closed her womb. Now I brought you back to the story of Job.
Mm-hmm.
The story of Job, it looks like God caused his suffering and loss. Did God remove his suffering? Did God give him suffering and remove everything? No, correct? God didn't cause Job's suffering. He didn't cause the death of his family. He didn't cause the loss of all his property. But you see, the way Job and the friends talk, God is ultimately responsible. But we who have the chance to be here 2020 looking at their story years ago, we can see that God didn't cause it. It was Satan that caused it. You see? So even though Satan was the one responsible for causing the suffering of Job, God allowed it. You see? God allowed it. So God is not the one who directly caused the suffering. And for all we know, like what you say, some people say, it's not God that closed her womb. Okay? There is a possibility that there was some other reason that caused God to say, okay, I will let the womb be closed. Just like, okay, I will let Job go through the suffering that Satan advocated. Correct? And it was a test for Job. What was the test for? To prove that Job was exactly what God said, blameless, upright. So sometimes being blameless and upright can come at a cost. Okay? Sometimes being blameless and upright can come at a cost. But what is the benefit or the takeaway that is good? The benefit or the takeaway that is good is Job, after the experience, was elevated by God. So that was for him, okay? For other people, then how it affects other people, this is where we talk about sovereignty of God, where we don't know how the jigsaw puzzle fits with every other piece. But where the picture of Job's story and life and character is concerned, this picture of Job, God has proven he is blameless and upright. So like I said, it's all a test of character. Does each situation we go through reveal about us? Because we have no control over these things, right? We have no control over these things, just like Job had no control. Correct or not? Job had no control. But it proved how Job went through the test and his character was revealed and confirmed by God. Okay? So God, somehow he sees every picture of every person and every situation, and he's the only one who has that glue to join all the pieces into a sensible picture. We don't. We only see certain parts, but there are other parts that help us to get a clue to integrate a little bit of these parts of the picture. Okay?
I have another question.
Yes.
At that part, I think when you're comparing the Mary that portion and then you mentioned like, oh, we can't be downcast, right?
Oh, that is the downcast is Hannah after after Eli console her. That is, but not we can't.
Okay. Because I thought can't be, is like
here. Her face was no longer downcast.
So your explanation, or did I understand wrongly that you said we shouldn't be downcast, we should be like grateful, blah blah, and all that?
No, I said it's a sensible response to carry on with life.
Okay.
Sensible response.
But it does not mean that we should not actually feel sometimes like low or downcast or sad. Because even Jesus, before he went to the, Calvary, right? He showed his feelings and all that, the anguish and all that. It's not wrong, right? It does not contradict with being like grateful Yeah, ultimately, yes, we are grateful, but it does not mean that we cannot sometimes be downcast, right? It
Okay,
doesn't
what's
mean that, we're
important?
not saying that, right?
Look at this, no longer.
Huh?
No longer downcast. Okay?
Okay,
The
got it.
idea is we don't dwell. We don't
Okay. If you
rut
say
of
you don't dwell, then I understand, yeah.
self-pity, feel so sorry for myself, I feel so lousy, I feel so down. You know, we don't stay in the
Okay.
rut. Emotionally, we have to move out because it's a sensible thing to carry on with life.
Okay, understand.
Ah.
My last question, sorry, does anybody else got questions? I should monopolize all the time. No, then my last question.
Okay.
My last one. You know, you covered that part. You said we keep to the right path, but it is God is merciful, not because we are good, right?
That is the prayers, huh? Yes, the prayers of the two ladies.
But then, if I take that, right, I don't know, my thinking is off or what. But if we don't, which means that if we don't keep the straight path, right, so does it mean that God is not merciful to us, to whoever it is? After all, we have our own free will, right?
No, you see, the thing here is
How does that?
faithful. Faithful. Just now, who was reading, I think was Jacqueline, the feet of his faithful one, if I'm not mistaken. So the thing here is our attempt to be faithful, to persevere in faithfulness, that God sees and God will ensure they keep on the right path in His mercy.
Okay, I get
it's
it
not
now.
because we are perfect. Okay,
No.
I did say it's not because we're perfect.
So I get it now. So for us, right, our part, we have to make the effort, right, to keep to the right path, and He enables that.
And be
right?
faithful to it, yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me already. Because if not, then when people don't keep to the path, then does it mean that because God is not merciful? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
People can make mistakes. Faithful people can make mistakes and go off track. Okay, but God is merciful; He can bring them back. So that He will guard the feet of His saints.
So it's more like basically in some sense, I mean, our effort in trying to be faithful, to follow, to obey, right? Something like that.
Counts with God. God sees the inside as well as the outside. If your inside is right and somehow make an honest mistake, not intentional, God will guard your feet.
I see. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Last of the last, Prophet.
Yes, sure, Jacob.
Last of the last. There are a few instances here referring to the horns, and you say horn means strength, right?
Yes, symbol of strength and power.
But why horn? It's like very devilish there.
Rhinoceros, you see those animals, rhinoceros, deer, and whatever, when they fight, you know, animals with horn, they fight, they use the horn. Correct?
But when they portray the devil, is always with horns also, right?
No, I think the nations, that to say the nations, you're talking about Revelation, those and anything with horns. That's to say they have power. It's not about the devil having horns. These horns can represent a godly nation. And here is this case, the horn of this anointed. Okay? So the word horn is not talking about Satan or devilish. Horn is basically a symbol of power and strength, whether a godly power or an ungodly power.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
That because there's a part that talks about God is the horn of our salvation. Yeah, if God is the horn of our salvation, then He cannot be devilish.
Right.
Correct? There you go. So it's part of the Bible. All right. Okay. So if nothing else, we will pray and we will say good night. Okay. And then we'll continue. Please go ahead and read for yourself first. Chapter 2, verse 12 onwards for next lesson. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for your love. We thank you, God, once again that your word encourages us and your word teaches us, Lord, that no matter what situations and circumstances we may find ourselves, Father God, that you are the one who will always be faithful. You are the one that will always watch over us. And what you want from us is to be faithful, to persevere, and to continue in your ways as much as we're able to. Guide us, Lord, and help us to draw close to each other to be able to do exactly what you desire for us. We pray that you guide and lead us through the times when we may find struggle, so that we will find strength and we will find you, Lord, right in the midst of where we are. We pray and give you thanks for all this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.